I didn't mean to say like that, but so yeah, some of the problems I have with like very few Legend of Zelda games is the story isn't that big. People might get mad at me for saying this, but Ocarina of Time doesn't really have a good story.
There really is not much story to it. I mean, it has
a bit.
It has a story, and for its time, it was a fairly decent story. You know.
Yeah.
The problem with Ocarina of Time is that the idea was that I should probably put it in the best fashion I can. The problem with Ocarina of Time wasn't so much whether or not it had a story or not, and why fans like it and such. Rather, it felt like it was the beginning of the story. It introduced so many important elements to the game. Like A Link to the Past gave us so much plot and story that it was like, okay, there's so much to it. And then Ocarina of Time kind of gave us the revelation of what all of that story in A Link to the Past meant. And that's why so many people liked it, because it wasn't so much the story of the game as much as it was the fact that it expanded upon a story that already existed, and it told basically the story that was in A Link to the Past. The problem came when they sort of expanded the timeline. They kind of got they made things confusing, because you had Ocarina of Time where Ganondorf was defeated, and so clearly this was the timeline. Clearly this was the idea that Ocarina of Time occurs, and then Twilight Princess, A Link to the Past clearly references the events of Ocarina of Time. But then Wind Waker came out, and it was a direct sequel to Ocarina of Time, and all of a sudden nothing made sense anymore.
Yeah, because Majora's Mask is also a direct sequel.
Right. I mean, well, the Majora's Mask still made sense. You had Majora's Mask occur, and people were already kind of getting the idea that there might have been some kind of a split in the timeline.
Yeah.
When Wind Waker came out, that was kind of when they revealed the idea that the timeline split. And that wasn't a big deal for people. It was like, oh, okay, so there was the Majora's Mask, the child timeline, and then the adult timeline. And so it was like, okay, that makes sense. Wind Waker occurred on one timeline, and A Link to the Past occurred on the other timeline. There was a split. And so it wasn't that big of a deal until Nintendo suddenly came out and said, here's Twilight Princess, it's a direct sequel to Ocarina of Time. And the two games, Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, can't possibly exist together on the same timeline, but somehow they both exist at the same time. And all of a sudden, you could not make any sense out of the timeline. There was a timeline split, obviously. We knew this. But how? How can the timeline split in such a way that Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, and A Link to the Past can all be completely direct sequels to Ocarina of Time?
Yeah.
It was impossible. Granted, that's what we thought at the time. Nobody, I don't know of anybody who came up with the idea of a three-way timeline split, because there's no evidence of that in Ocarina of Time, So why would you possibly think that there was some kind of a three-way split after Ocarina? You know, and even the official like Zelda timeline version, you know, excuse doesn't make as much sense as it should. You know, it's like, so Link somehow dies in this timeline, and then that creates the timeline where like Twilight Princess and all occur, except that how can Link die and win? And it could be explained simply.
Actually, I think the Twilight Princess portion, Link won, but it was well, the one that where he failed was the one with the original Legend of Zelda and such like that.
Right.
Yeah.
But somehow he dies in Ocarina of Time, and he wins and survives. Because remember, the timeline splits three ways in Ocarina. On one side, Link dies in Ocarina of Time.
Well, I think it's because Twilight Princess takes place at the Majora's Mask.
Well, you're not fully getting it.
I understand though.
Yeah, in Ocarina of Time, Link dies. How can he die in Ocarina of Time and still in the exact same game win and defeat Ganondorf when he is dead?
Yeah.
Because the timeline that has A Link to the Past and such is the timeline where in Ocarina of Time Link dies fighting Ganondorf. During the fight against Ganondorf, Link dies, Ganondorf gets the Triforce, and that's it, you know. You win, right? You know, the Ganondorf wins, etc., becomes Ganon. But then there's the second timeline, the adult timeline, where instead of dying against the Ganondorf, he wins against Ganondorf. And then there's the child timeline, where after he won against Ganondorf, then he went back in time. And it's like, how do you explain Link dies, but he doesn't die? You can't explain it. Mm-hmm. The trick to it is remember that there's only been one split of the Triforce in all of the Hyrulean history. The trick to explaining the three-path Zelda there is the fact that there is a split in the Triforce, and it affects time to the point where every Triforce owner gets a timeline where they are the victor, basically. You have the timeline of power, where Link dies, Ganondorf wins, that's it. You have the timeline of wisdom, Link wins, he gets sent back in time, and Zelda continues on to rule Hyrule, and Wind Waker occurs.
As a pirate.
Well, that's centuries later. But then there's the timeline of courage, where Link goes back in time, tells everybody of Ganondorf's inevitable what's the word? Inevitable betrayal, and he gets locked away for it, attempted to be executed, and ends up getting turned into what he was in Twilight Princess. And that's my thoughts on the timeline. That's my thoughts on how it works. Is that not only did the Triforce split, but because of the split in the Triforce, it created the multiple timelines. because of the split of the Triforce. Each Triforce basically, the Triforce granted Ganondorf's wish to win, but at the same time, it couldn't grant his wish fully, and it, instead of granting it to him as ultimate victory, it split apart and created alternate timelines where each person got the victory in the end. So
that makes sense.
That's where I view the timeline split. That's what I view for the timeline split, because really it's the only way you can make sense out of it, aside from just doing exactly what MatPat said. It's not a timeline, it's a multiverse.
Yeah.
So
but yeah, what I was saying before was Ocarina of Time is a great game, but I didn't really. The story wasn't, to me, wasn't that thrilling.
yeah, we kind of got sidetracked with the timeline thing. But again, the story of of Ocarina of Time was absolutely fantastic when it came out. But as they've been doing more things with the series, it's made it hard to tie in Ocarina of Time with everything else. And now we have the official timeline and can understand it, but it caused so much confusion that it's really hard to honestly look at Ocarina of Time and say, yeah, this is a great game with a great story and everything, when it's you can't connect it to anything anymore, because there's so many things that now connect to it, and at the same time nothing connects to it.
what I mean is Ocarina of Time as a whole, just by itself.
Yeah.
I don't mean like you play other Legend of Zelda games. I mean just by itself.
Yeah.
To me, just okay. When I played Ocarina of Time, it was generally my first Legend of Zelda game that I kind of fully played. I played other games, like my first game being the Legend of Zelda game, which to me isn't a good game. The second game I actually played was Phantom Hourglass, and that game I actually had really fun with.
Right.
But I never really finished it. And then finally I played Ocarina of Time, and just the same, when I played it, I didn't know there was any connections with Ocarina of Time. So when I played it, sure, I enjoyed it, but the story wasn't thrilling by itself.
Well, again, that was a lot of what made Ocarina of Time's story thrilling. Ocarina of Time on its own is really freaking boring.
It really is.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get, to point out, was Ocarina of Time is really kind of a boring game.
It is. It's kind of makes me wonder why people say it's the best game.
Well, that's what I was stating, was the reason people thought it was such a great game was because it was so connected to the rest of the series. If it hadn't had that connection that it had, I don't think people would have even cared about the story much.
Yeah.
Because there's a guy that I watch. He does it. His channel is called Really Freaking Clever, and he talked about what makes Ocarina of Time really freaking clever. And I think a lot of his review was good about it, but he said some things that I went, but you can't say that. He talked about, the thing that made Ocarina of Time so great, the thing that holds it together and keeps people interested, is the fact that it connected all of the games back then all together into one, cohesive story. And it was a really good game and told a lot of really good story. You know, it was the first one to introduce us to Ganondorf and explain who he was and so on. And he said, for all of that, the game was, as he always says, really freaking clever. The thing that I thought was kind of confusing and made no sense, that I went, but you can't say that, is he said, you know, Ocarina of Time did all of this stuff. And then Twilight Princess and games after Ocarina of Time, like of Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, did it better. And then he goes, but that's why Ocarina of Time was so clever and so great, because it was the first one to do it. Like, you can't say that a game is really, like, amazing for the thing it did, and then turn around and tell me that another game did it better, and still tell me that that is the reason why that game is more beloved than the other games. You cannot tell me that Wind Waker is... If Ocarina of Time did this great thing, and Wind Waker did it better, you cannot tell me that because Ocarina of Time did it, you know, that's why everybody loves it more than Wind Waker. No, I'm sorry. That doesn't make sense. Because Wind Waker did it better, so people should love it more than Ocarina of Time. I want to know why Ocarina of Time is so beloved. Why the game is so freaking clever. Why it's so amazing. But everybody I talk to, and I'm going to point out Brentalfloss on this one. Mm-hmm. The Brentalfloss Ocarina of Time with lyrics.
He's actually Brentalfloss is actually correct with that song.
Yeah, he during his song he was talking about how bad it was, and I know that it was mostly a joke. You know, he did the bad guy, Dave did the good guy. But during the song, Dave has a line that I went, and that is the reason why Ocarina of Time is so beloved. He said, this is just nostalgia now. You weren't the proper age. And like, exactly. Nobody now understands, because you had to be in that time, in that age. You had to play Ocarina of Time when it was new. Ocarina of Time is not that good of a game, because in order to enjoy it the way that people did, you had to play it then. People enjoy Ocarina of Time because the graphics were the first 3D Zelda graphics ever created, and it was amazing. Mm-hmm. You know, as Dave puts it, you know, the what were the words he said? You know, you were able to look around. You weren't squinting down from above anymore, and so you were able to see all the new things. Yes, in the transition between 2D and 3D, that is exactly what it felt like, and it is amazing. Problem is, and the reason why I really don't care for Ocarina of Time is simply, I didn't play Ocarina of Time when Ocarina of Time and 3D were new things. I played Ocarina of Time when Ocarina of Time had been out for like 4 years. You know, what games did I play growing up that were 3D? Super Mario, Star Fox. I mean, Legend of Zelda, I didn't even get a chance to play Ocarina of Time until like the year 2000, and Ocarina of Time was not my first 3D Zelda game. I played through Majora's Mask, partially, before I played Ocarina of Time. And so, when you're looking at Majora's Mask, you know, a game using Majora's Mask graphics, you don't, you know, I know that, you know, it was Ocarina of Time came out first, but the graphics, for me, felt like, oh, these are the same graphics from Majora's Mask. And so it wasn't, oh look, this game is in 3D now. First of all, I had never played a Zelda game before Majora's Mask. Well, I had a couple of times, but I didn't know they were Zelda games. I played like A Link to the Past and Link's Awakening. But I didn't know what Zelda was or anything, so I never made a connection between Link to the Past and Link's Awakening and Majora's Mask. And so I didn't have a nostalgic, oh look at these graphics feel. When I got to Ocarina of Time, I was like, oh, this is a fun game, you know. And then I played Majora's Mask. I was like, so this is what Legend of Zelda is. You know, I played Legend of Zelda, Majora's Mask. I didn't know it was called Majora's Mask. I just knew it was called Legend of Zelda. And then after I played Majora's Mask, then I got a chance to play Ocarina of Time. And not knowing anything about release times, not knowing anything about, oh, this game came out first, etc. I looked at Ocarina of Time and thought, wow, this game is so very much like Majora's Mask. In fact, I don't like it as much. They did a better job with, Majora's Mask. What the heck happened between games? I didn't know that they were, which game came out first or anything. But that's an important fact. The thing that defines Ocarina of Time as the greatest game ever made is entirely the fact that people played it before every other 3D Zelda game. And my first, it was also the first 3D Zelda game. And I'm sorry, but I wasn't a Zelda fan before Majora's Mask. I didn't know about Legend of Zelda before Majora's Mask, even though I had played Link's Awakening and A Link to the Past, because again, I didn't know that they had an overarching title. When I looked at my Link's Awakening game cartridge, I saw Link's Awakening DX. I didn't see Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening DX. And so I didn't know that these games were all connected, and that there was this whole big thing with, the difference between 2D and 3D. And so I didn't have the nostalgic jump into 3D from 2D. And because I didn't have that, I did not have. I had really no, I just didn't. I'm just going to say it. I didn't like Ocarina of Time. Now, I will state something else on my view of Ocarina of Time. And I state this every time because people are always like, well, you must have had some kind of bad experience. Yes, I did have a bad experience with Ocarina of Time the first time I played it. The copy of the game that I had was glitched. I don't know why. There was some kind of weird glitch in the game, and everybody I tell this to goes, that couldn't have possibly been real. This is what happened. I played Ocarina of Time for the very first time. I loaded the game up, and the first thing I found in the game was, the big cutscene with going through the Deku Tree, etc. And it's like, oh, this is a pretty interesting looking game, etc. And then I get to the Deku Tree, and I get through the Deku Tree, and then I get out of the Deku Tree, and I'm told, go to Hyrule Castle. Okay, so I go to Hyrule Castle to meet the Princess of Destiny. When I get to Hyrule Castle, I get the you have all 3 spiritual stones cutscene. And I get the Ocarina of Time. I haven't gone through any of the extra 2 dungeons. I went straight from there into getting the Ocarina of Time, not knowing that this was not the way the game was supposed to be. I assumed, okay, this is what happens, and I kept going on and playing. And so I get the Ocarina of Time, and it tells me, oh, go play the Song of Time. So I go there, and I play the Song of Time, and I have all 3 spiritual stones. And the door of time opens. And, oh, Link, look, it's the Master Sword. I'm like, oh, hey, I kind of remember that from A Link to the Past. Something about the Master Sword. That's kind of cool that this game had a... again, I didn't realize A Link to the Past was Legend of Zelda. So I actually said, oh, hey, cool, this has a Master Sword in it. Oh, no, I didn't know that was a big thing. And so then I get the gosh, I cannot make this jump. I get the cutscene where you visit, you wake up in the Sacred Realm, and you meet Rauru, and he talks to you and everything. And then you know what immediately followed that? Instead of getting the cutscene where you come back and you talk to Sheik, and then she tells you to go to the forest temple. The cutscene that I got was, oh, here's Sheik, and by the way, you have the Triforce of Courage, and I'm sorry for not telling you this when I first met you. I didn't even know who you were. I didn't even know that we met at some point. Did I miss something? And, oh, by the way, I'm Zelda, and then Ganondorf captures her, and, it's off to Ganon's tower.
Wow.
And guess what happens after that? I walk up to Ganon's tower because, okay, the game is ushering me towards this place. So I go over, I go up to Ganon's tower, I get the Sage Bridge, I walk into Ganon's tower, I make my way through Ganon's tower, I beat the game. Well, that was kind of a boring game. There was barely any story to it.
Yeah.
I reset the game. Suddenly, I don't understand why I'm not getting the cutscene with Zelda. Suddenly, I don't understand why I can't get anywhere. I get to the court, to the thing, and I'm like, wait, shouldn't I have the Ocarina of Time? I'm confused. Because the first time I played the game, something glitched. Second time I played through the game, not a glitch.
Yeah, that is so weird.
Yeah, don't know what happened. But because of the fact that I didn't get to play through Ocarina of Time, I never got the experience of going through Ocarina of Time properly. And in the end, it was, okay, that was a fun game, I guess. I mean, it was kind of short. I did, 2 dungeons? I mean, well, whatever. It was kind of short, but hey, whatever, I guess.
But yeah, honestly, in full, Ocarina of Time story isn't that great. I'm sorry, but it's...
Yeah, by itself, I'm sorry, but Ocarina of Time does not have an interesting story. Out of the Legend of Zelda games, I've personally found that most of, if not all of, the other Zelda games just have a better story.